Juneteenth is a day of celebration of freedom. But in the last several weeks, our country and our communities right here in Arizona and really around the valley have identified in a lot of ways that we don't all feel free. So for weeks now, we've been watching protesters demand real change and solutions, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So I want to thank you all for joining me in this roundtable. I want to introduce who we have today. We have Robbin Coulon, Vice Chair for the Arizona Community Foundation, Pastor Andre Miller from New Beginning Church, Jadyn Ferguson, a community activist who has been part of the local protests here in the Valley, and Kevin Robinson, a former assistant police chief. So first of all, thank you all for joining me here today. The first question that I want to pose to the entire group, but I'm going to start first with Jadyn, is what do you hope will be the legacy of these protests?
The legacy, man, I mean, my hope for all of this happening right now is that we won't have this conversation again. And I hope that it stops and that we actually get real change, because I feel like this has been a problem for so long. We won't see it in a few weeks. It's not going to happen in a couple of months. But I hope that we won't have to have this conversation again. And I hope that the legacy is that we've learned, like, not that racism isn't okay. I hope that's the legacy. I hope that we just can walk away from that.
And Pastor Miller, I mean, we've seen this tsunami of protests really just upend our entire country. What do you hope the legacy will be?
Well, again, kind of like what Jadyn said, I mean, my hope is that the whole country and actually the whole world remains awake. We've dealt with a time where, in the United States, almost 86% of the population has not really resonated with the problems of the other 14%. And I think right now we're at a place where everyone is woke and everyone sees this issue and everyone sees a problem. And it is a catalyst that we must do something about it. So I think that's the legacy, that this was a time where everybody woke up.
All right, Robbin, what are your thoughts?
I hope everybody votes. I think this is a time of real racial reckoning. This is a moment in which we have seen a number of different constituencies and people all around the nation and the world come together for what we call ending racial injustice. But what does that really mean unless we can translate that into real policy and real action? So I hope that we don't just have mere aspirational goals, but we really take on the challenge, do the hard work, have the difficult conversations, and then vote. Vote for those folks who will implement the changes that we really want to see.
All right, Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Well, mine would be a variation on what everybody has already said. But more than anything else, I hope we see reform or change. And like Robbin said, I want to see a record number of people come out and vote. I want people to understand and recognize, as Pastor Andre said, with regard to staying, remaining aware. He said being woke, and most definitely that's the case. You want people to understand that their voice means something. And what we have seen in the last couple of weeks is that there is a large segment of our communities who are aware and they want to be engaged.
I'm going to continue with you, Kevin, because you are a former leader in law enforcement. Is there a diversity problem within our Valley Police Departments?
Unfortunately, yes, there is. When you look at populations, you would like for your police departments to reflect the population that they're inside the organization, be reflective of the populations they serve. That's not the case. So a lot of folks, especially Black people, are not necessarily going into law enforcement. And I think we understand why. They see what has gone on, and why would they want to be a part of an organization or a group that has been repressive toward them. So law enforcement has a long way to go to become more inclusive and to make sure they become more diverse in the process.
And Pastor Miller, I want to bring you in on this topic too. I know that recently faith leaders asked Governor Ducey to diversify the Arizona Peace Officer Standard and Training Board. Currently, there are no members of color on this board. There are 12 members. Do you think that we need to see more people of color on boards and also in community leadership roles?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the demographics of the state, that have been changing and evolving over time. Many of the demographics of these organizations and the leadership has not changed. They've remained the same. And also, even when you look at the city I live in, Mesa, where in 1967 they put prohibitions on civilian oversight for the police department. And so there are a lot of things that have been in place systematically or institutionally that have prevented diversity. And so I would love to see African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, just in leadership positions in all the vocations that we see in the Valley. There is definitely a lack of diversity, especially in policing.
Sure, and I do know faith leaders have also asked on Governor Ducey's office to also reflect some of that diversity. Robbin, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think, if we look in terms of diversity, we really have to focus on what will build confidence in the community that the police really want to keep us safe. And having a diverse workforce is just one of the steps to that. Obviously, people are looking at other police reforms, but until, the community feels safe and sees people who represent them actually policing them, I think that's really going to be the heart of the problem.
All right, we want to talk specifics now. This controversial topic that's being talked about all over the country, defund the police. Jadyn, what does defund the police mean to you?
I think, to me, I think it's a scary concept because I think a lot of people think when we say defund the police, that means get rid of the police, right? And it's like, well, then who are you gonna call? It's like, yeah, I get it. But I think defunding the police, and it means, like, in my head, it's like they have so much power right now, and that's obvious that they abuse it a lot. I think that it needs defunding the police would mean, like, just taking some of their money away and giving it to the communities and giving it to teachers and giving it to, I feel like we should give it to, like, counselors for these officers so that they can get help because, I think it should go in other places because we put so much money to these guys and it's like, why? Why? We're just gonna kill people that look like me. So of course, I'm young and I'm super on fire about this movement right now. So I'm all about that. I'm like, I think the money could be used in different places anyways. So I think, yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. And you say that you're young, but I mean, the fact that, young people like you have done what you've done with these protests across the country is why we're actually here today and why we're having this conversation. Pastor Miller, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I think that when we start saying the word defund the police, you get a lot of people who are part of the profession who get offended when you say that. Mm-hmm. And I think we actually have to laser focus and hone exactly what that means. So I think, there are some people who are calling for dismantling police agencies like they did in Camden, New Jersey. And then there are others saying that we need to reallocate some of the funds that are in policing. Because when you start to reallocate some of the funds, you can start to demilitarize these police agencies because they've really turned into an occupying force. I was a military police officer. I served in the United States Army. And so for me, defunding the police, we have to, again, define what that actually is. It's not defunding the police and getting rid of the police. Because if we can be honest, personal accountability comes into play. And a lot of people right now, we don't stop our friends and our family members if they're doing something illegal. So to get rid of the police would be foolish and foolhardy. But I think we do need to look at some of the excesses that are spent in some of these agencies and figure out where those monies can be reallocated to actually help the public, the general public.
And Kevin, I mean, this is your field. I mean, there's been a couple of different ways of thought here. Reform, defund, which we're talking about, some more extreme measures like dismantling and even abolishing. Do you support any of these coming from a law enforcement background?
Putting on from a law enforcement standpoint, what I see, because I think we need to, first of all, listen to the community. They're speaking loud and clear. I think what needs to happen is a reallocation of some of the funding that goes into police departments. And I think it's a little bit about what Jadyn was saying, a little bit about what Pastor Andre was saying, because, and I've said this all along, I said it earlier this week in a couple of different interviews, police departments command a significant portion of the budgets from most municipalities. And so every year when I had the budget with the Phoenix Police Department, we would go through an exercise and ask what would we look like if we had to decrease our budget by 5, 10, 15%. Those things can happen. We just have to realize departments have to do a deep dive and figure out what will they not do. And so things can happen, and where those monies should go, in my opinion, is to the social service organizations that will hopefully decrease the number of police calls or the need for the police in certain areas or with certain people. So there should be a better use of the funds, is what I'm getting at.
And Pastor Andre, what do you think about reform being enough? Because I know that back in 2018, you were calling for reform of the Mesa Police Department after a video came out showing a gentleman, Robert Johnson, being beaten by those officers. Do you still feel like reform is enough?
So reform is definitely what's needed, and it has to be, measured steps. So there are a lot of things that we have done since 2018, but there are a lot of things that we really need to do. And to be honest, most of the things that we really need to do are met with resistance because it's uncomfortable and it's foreign for police agencies who police the way that they police for generations, right? So I do believe, again, in reallocation of funds, I do also believe that we have to have some true civilian oversight. And I know a lot of police professionals think oversight is a dirty word, but it's not. It's what the communities are asking for with accountability. Because many agencies, not just in the Valley, but across the country, have not been transparent. They've not been open. They've not been given full disclosure when the community is saying, hey, this happened and we want to know about it. So that is something that we must have when you talk about change, when you talk about reform. So we have to not only begin to reallocate things to social services where you have a large amount of people who are committing petty crimes who actually have mental health ailments, but we're not addressing that. So now we're criminalizing people who have mental health problems. So we need to definitely reform policing, but we need to reform this whole social structure that we have.
Robbin, go ahead.
I'm sorry. What I was going to say to what Pastor Andre is saying, that's the importance of diversity. What you're talking about, when you get different folks into law enforcement, into the criminal justice field, you get a different way of looking at things. So I can tell you right now, in Phoenix, you have Police Chief Jerry Williams. The last couple of police chiefs that Phoenix had, they didn't think the same way Jerry does. And Jerry is going in a direction, quite honestly, I don't think they had the vision to go into. So that's the importance. Jerry being a Black female, having been raised here in the Valley, she comes at it, a little differently as somebody else would. So that's, when we talk about changes and moving organizations around and reorganizing, that's the importance of diversity, because the more you have, the greater diversity you have, the greater diversity of thought that you're going to have within the organizations.
Robbin, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when you talk about police reform, we're talking about a multi-layered kind of approach. The police accountability for their behavior and their conduct is one level. Having civilian oversight, I was very proud of what happened in the city of Phoenix and how the protesters and the folks like me who were just writing emails were able to come together and actually achieve full funding of the city of Phoenix oversight process. But looking at diversity, looking at the reallocation of these resources, really addressing the issues of mental health, homelessness, maybe even addressing whether police officers should be in our schools. Those kinds of things take community investment. There are organizations out there that are already addressing some of these needs, and maybe a better allocation of the resources would be to divert it to either those nonprofits, those municipalities, or those organizations that are doing the work. So I see it multi-layered, but I also see what's really happening is there are people that are putting up barriers to any reform. And, whether it's through, the legal system, whether it's through, organizational structures, I think we really have to dig deep and look where the reform needs needs to occur on multiple levels.
And there are some little steps. Kevin, you brought up Chief Jerry Williams. She did announce earlier this week that her department would be banning the use of chokeholds. Do you agree with this as a way of addressing police brutality? And do you have any alternative solutions?
No, I think it was the right move. You see law enforcement agencies across the country doing the exact same thing. And people push back, you're going to get that automatically. The bottom line is there are so many things that can be done that don't really hurt anything, and it just moves an organization further ahead and closer to the community. And I think that's what Jerry's looking for. She's looking for things that she can do so that the community has confidence in her police department. And I thought it was the right move.
All right, Jadyn, I want to bring you back in. I mean, you've been out there on the streets, chanting, yelling, marching, asking for the attention of the people who make decisions, our elected officials, our city, our state officials. Have you had a chance to interact with any of them?
I have not, which is crazy. Yeah, I've been out there every day and I've just been so dedicated to the cause, but I'm sure they're sick and tired of hearing of me, and I hope they are, and they will hear me. So
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the importance of having a seat at the table, right? So, I mean, the protesting can't really go on forever, though, right? So, how do you
I hope it doesn't.
exactly? So, how do you shift your focus and continuing to try to get your voice heard?
I mean, I am gonna do everything that I can. This has been such of like a changing life, like part of my life for me. Like, I think it's so important to me, and I'm gonna use my social media. I will speak out to everyone if I got to. Hi, I'm Jadyn. Let's talk about racial equality. Like, I am going to be that person that just talks about it in any way that I can. If I need to start selling things, I will do so. Like, I am very dedicated to that because my life matters. Like, and I don't need to explain that to people, but if I got to, I will. So, like I'm looking out to whatever I have to do. I'm open to anything.
And Pastor Miller, as a pastor, you're having some very tough conversations right now with your congregation. What message do you have for others as we kind of navigate this pivotal moment?
So, I mean, the message that I've been sharing, and we had an event here, a unity event the other day. Jadyn was there actually. The message that we've been sharing is that it's going to take all of us to fix all of this. It's going to take believers and non-believers. It's going to take Black, brown, white, Hispanic. This is not just a Black issue. This is an issue that affects all of us. So that is what I've been sharing, that it takes all of us to fix all of this. And we've been also just sharing with people that we see the hope in what's happening, that we cannot go back to things as they were. We see the hope in what's happening, knowing that young people like Jadyn, I'm 40, so I'm getting old, right? So you got somebody like
Wait a minute,
like Jadyn,
wait a minute.
Kevin's way older. Kevin's way older than me. Kevin's way older. Kevin's way older. But when you look at the generations, people like Jadyn really excite me because I know as I'm getting older, she's a bundle of energy, right? She can run faster than I can or walk faster than I can. I can walk faster than Kevin, so it's this next generation that's coming up is saying, Caribe, we are going to, we're going to follow through with this. Yeah, they don't want to march all the time, but we're going to follow through with this. And so it's imperative that people like me and people like Kevin are pouring into them, but not only doing that, we are making plans. We are putting things on paper that can be implemented and changed. So it's very important to hear voices like Kevin, who is inside of the law enforcement profession, people like me who have very good relationships with the law enforcement profession. And then this young generation that's coming up that's like, hey, enough is enough. I got Black friends, white friends. I don't want to see my friends hurt at the hands of police. So I really believe, like, I am very optimistic. I'm very optimistic.
And that actually leads me right into my next question for all of you, and we can go around. How optimistic are each of you that these changes are really going to happen? We can start first with Robbin, and then we'll go over to Jadyn.
I am very optimistic when I see that this is really a global movement. When I see that even though it may take incremental steps, I see that we have made real change just in the past 2 or 3 weeks. Just getting, I'm encouraged by more police accountability measures. I'm encouraged by the removal of Confederate statutes, and I'm encouraged by some of the other steps that have been made. But those to me are going to happen. They're going to happen within time. What really needs to happen is economic equality and investment in people of color, in moving their lives ahead, real social change. I think this is a time that we can reframe America. We can reframe the American dream for a lot of people. But so I'm hopeful about that, and I'm not as fast as Jadyn or Andre, but
very fast.
You're faster than Kevin.
From where I'm sitting, I have the power of my computer. I have the power of my telephone. I have the power of my ability to talk and to community leaders and to talk to my peers. And every one of us, I think, has been inspired by the protesters and by this movement. And it really is a movement. And so, I really think as we celebrate emancipation of Black people, we need to reassess what that really means in 2020.
All right, Jadyn, are you optimistic?
I feel like I am kind of 50-50 on this one. I would say that I'm pretty optimistic about life, but this one I struggle with. I've struggled with this one because it's bigger than the police right now to me. It's not just about police brutality. I think that racism is so deeply rooted in this country that we need to just uproot it and destroy it. And that is going to be so hard and so difficult. And that's going to take so much time. Am I hopeful? Yes, I'm very hopeful I hope we can get to that point. But we've been so comfortable in this place, specifically Black people being pushed around in that sense. And I really feel like my generation is sick and tired of it. Like, we're just over it. And, my ancestors did this. The people before me did this. MLK's done what we've done. I want it to be done after this. And am I hopeful? Some days I am, and some days I'm not. But I'm praying that it will be better for us. And I'm praying that it'll be better for my kids and for the generation after me and after that and after that. And that's why I'm going so hard every day out there. And that's why I'm out there every day, because I want it to be better for me. I want it to be better for them. Just for anyone, not just Black people, but brown people, my Asian homies, like my Mexican family, like everybody. I want it better for all of us that are minorities in here. Like, it's not fair. Like, we have a voice and we count just as much. And I'll say that to the day I die. I'll take that to the grave.
Jadyn, can I ask you a question? Do you think we need a reconciliation process, a process
100%.
that looks at everything?
100%. Nothing. I don't think we can't skip that process. We need reconciliation. There's been a lot of pain and hurt, and I need reconciliation just for myself. Like, I totally think we need that reconciliation period, because, I've had people reach out to me during this time that have told me, like, I'm so sorry. And it's like, I get it. I get where they're coming from. They're trying to find that middle ground with me and apologize to me. But I'm like, are you being racist? Should I be worried? Why are you apologizing? But they're just trying to reconcile with me. And honestly, that is such a blessing. Thank you for apologizing to me. I needed that. Like, that you're validating my feelings. You're making me feel good. Like, it making me feel like it's okay for me to have this anger, to have this rage. Because there's a lot of anger and rage right now. And I think the only way to calm that down is reconciliation. We have to reconcile as a whole, just hug it out, like, whatever we gotta do.
I want to give you a hug right now, Jadyn.
I'm gonna give you a hug.
I know. Yes.
So here's the other aspect of my hope, right? For so many years, people have said that the system is broken. And I've always said the system is not broken. It's working just the way that it has been designed to work. Mm-hmm. And I think people are realizing that this system, the way that it's working, is by its design. And so we have to tackle this system. So I'm hopeful there that people realize that we're not just picking at one little thing, We're saying that this system, there are issues that are systemic that go all the way back to the founding of this country. I hate to say nation because there was a nation already here when the country was founded. But when you look at that, people are realizing that this system that has been built up generation over generation, it is working the way that it's supposed to. And we're going to need to start dismantling that to make sure that it works for everyone. So that is where my real hope comes in, because I hear my white brothers and sisters saying, Andre, this system is messed up. I'm like, yes, we've been saying that for 401 years. Thank you.
Yeah, finally, it's about time. All right, Kevin, how about you?
Since I've been outed as the oldest person in the round table, I think I need to own that. And for two reasons.
That was wrong, Andre, by the way.
He was right. There's nothing wrong with it. Two things. I'm optimistic because I have seen more change in law enforcement across this country in the last 2 weeks than I really saw in the 36 and a half years I served with the Phoenix Police Department. So much has happened. So from a law enforcement standpoint, I realize that so many folks have spoken up and spoken out and been as energetic as, as everyone on this panel has been. There is so much change that has occurred, and there's so much more that I believe will occur. The second part to my optimism is based on, I teach out at Arizona State University now. Each semester I have about 425 students. The vast majority of them want to go into some kind of career in the criminal justice field, not necessarily police officers, but law school, a bunch of things like that. And overwhelmingly, the majority of my students, they're just like Jadyn. I mean, they are that energetic, they are that optimistic, and I think they're dead set on being the change that this country needs. So I am optimistic about the future. I'm optimistic about the present because things are changing in law enforcement, and I think it can only get better from here.
And Caribe, I think it feels more inclusive this time.
Yes.
I really think that it's not just Black people out there speaking to injustice. So it gives me a lot of hope.
If I can add one more thing, it's interesting. We live over in the east part of Phoenix, over in the Arcadian neighborhood, and I get up early and go walking. Can't run anymore because, like Pastor Andre pointed out, I'm old. But it's been really surprising in the last couple of weeks. I've had at least 3 or 4 folks stop me. People one person I knew, the other 3 I did not, stop me and engage me in a conversation, and it ended with them apologizing for not really understanding what I had been dealing with. And, and they don't know me. They don't know that for, the better part of almost 4 decades, I was a police officer. They don't know anything about my background, but they wanted me to know that. And over here in the Arcadian neighborhood, there's not a whole lot of Blacks that live. And, clearly I stand out when I'm out and about, but they took the time to talk to me, to engage me. So that's where that optimism comes from. I see it happening around me, and it's different. Like Robbin said, there's so many people out there this time around, so many different people that I think we're destined for goodness.
Starts with changing hearts, right? Well, you guys, thank you so much. We could have this conversation all day long, right? But thank you so much for your passion, your expertise, your commitment. I think we all know this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint, but hopefully we will get to that change that we want to see. So again, thank you all for joining us in this discussion.
Thank you so much,
You're welcome. Thank you. You guys take care.